all of the businesses that are talking about this vociferously and even citing AI as like a reason for cutting, they all have invested in AI, and they need to be able to justify to their investors and to their board what are the savings.
Joining me on the Tech Report today is Natasha Bernal, Senior Business Editor at Wired. Welcome again.
Thank you.
I want to first talk about the layoffs that we've seen at Amazon and Meta. Let's start with Zuckerberg, who recently downsized his AI wing again, and this time to the tune of 600 employees. What do we know about the people that were fired and the roles that they held?
Yeah, so this is what, the fourth, I want to say, sort of amount of cuts and restructurings that Meta's had. So the layoffs were in Meta's so-called superintelligence labs, which is the umbrella name for the company's AI efforts. All in all, this organization, this side of the business has around 3,000 employees, though obviously the exact number of workers is unclear. But according to reporting that's out there, that's about the number that the people think in terms of headcount. The kind of people that were cut, well, it's hard to tell at the moment, but it doesn't appear to have affected the newest hires, because those are dedicated towards trying to achieve superintelligence, which is something that Mark Zuckerberg is really interested in, which is something that exceeds the capabilities of human reasoning. Instead, it looks like those jobs were aimed at cleaning up the organizational bloat, I suppose, that comes from 3 years of building up Meta's AI capabilities, which is what people were talking to the New York Times about in their report on the cuts. It is unclear whether all of the people involved are in fact from those efforts, but that was basically the gist of it. And the layoffs were supposedly aiming at helping AI at Meta develop more quickly with more products and more capabilities, but fewer people.
So you said supposedly there, and I suppose that the justification Meta seems to be giving is to make their superintelligence lab and their AI department more nimble, which under 3,000 people, I suppose maybe they've achieved that. But if it's supposedly, do you see something else going on there? Is it streamlining, or is it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting that, because when you think about the messaging that the company had towards its employees throughout this layoff, it's strange, right? You have to kind of read between the lines of these messages, and a memo that was circulated that reportedly showed what Alexander Wang, who's in charge of the AI efforts at Meta, was saying to employees and staff members. He was saying that basically by reducing the amount of people on the team, fewer conversations will be had, fewer people will be talking, and therefore we'll get things done quicker, thereby implying that like just the amount of people that were in the room or in any rooms or any virtual rooms were the thing that was maybe slowing down Meta's efforts. And I guess that is always a matter of opinion, right? There are there are tremendously valuable people that are working in the space, and perhaps doing something nimbly does not make it better. And that would be my argument. So that's why I say supposedly, because it's yet to be seen. It depends on the people that have been cut, right? You want the right people to be part of the conversation, and cutting 600 people in one blow is not necessarily going to be conducive to having better chats about AI.
Yeah, and as you say, they've aptly named the new focus of Meta as superintelligence labs. But for me, people interested in this kind of thing, superintelligence, we're quite a way off. So how are they doing compared to their competitors at the moment with these cuts, but yet investment? And
it's tricky, isn't it? Because it's a really competitive space. There's a lot of money being thrown around. Meta wants to very much get in on the action, I suppose, and the attention that other businesses have been having. It was a bit of a rocky kind of first half of the year. Meta didn't exactly paint itself in glory, I suppose. With Llama, there's not been the level of excitement around it that there has been for rival AI models. The development of Llama has also maybe not been as quick as its rivals, and so Mark Zuckerberg has been working on the PR side of things, and he's been working on the investment side of things, and it's we've seen that $14.3 billion investment in Scale AI, for example, to try and just show like we're still very much in the race. We've seen this recruitment effort where he's tried to poach as many people from OpenAI as possible, to try to bolster up the credibility of the team, but also to bolster up its profile and its visibility, and to be able to say we've caught the best people in the industry, and that has generated some almost very minute, but certainly a lot of interest within the industry of people going like, do you want to accept the golden ticket to work for Mark Zuckerberg, or do you want to work on something that you think might be more interesting or better or whatever. So there was a lot of debate going on amongst coders, engineers, people that they're looking for, AI researchers, experts, on whether they wanted to join at all. But you're talking about a salary that is well into the hundreds of millions for these people. So it made the market intensely competitive. And obviously other companies fought back and they, wanted to try and keep their talent. But that's basically what they've been doing to try to, I suppose, garner some interest in what Meta is trying to do. The cuts are also a way to garner interest, I would argue, because you're trying to say we're different. We're not this huge behemoth company that will struggle to, be nimble and make decisions and be innovative and try and do something new. And I suppose, perhaps the visual of having 4 restructurings in a year might not be the best way to convey that. But, if this is the last one they have, then hey, who can blame them, right?
Well, I guess they've only got a couple months left. If we look now at some of the jobs being cut because of AI, we saw Amazon lay off, I think it was at least 13,000 people yesterday. Some reports were saying it was going to be 30,000. So do you think we've seen the last of this round of job cuts? Or at least this round, maybe not the end of the job cuts, which I'll get to later.
Yeah, I'd be very skeptical about this being the end of it. I mean, it feels like a wave that started at the beginning of this year and is certainly continuing apace. It was Reuters, I think, that reported the rumors about the potentially larger amount of layoffs first, and they cited some sources close to the company as the reason for reporting this. And so if this is true, then we should expect really extremely large cuts to come. I guess, though, that it is important to have some perspective here. And much like with Meta, you think 600 people is a massive amount of people. It is, it 100% is. But with the 30,000 jobs, corporate jobs, that are being cut at Amazon, you have to remember that this is maybe 5% of its employees. We've got, was it 1.55 million for Amazon, but in the corporate side of things, it's almost 10%. Of the entire cohort of staff members. So this is an important cut, and it's a relevant cut because we've not seen the lights from Amazon since, 2022 was the last time there was a massive round of cuts. So this is a big deal. And interestingly, it's hitting the corporate side of the business, which I don't think many people necessarily expected. There was all this talk about automation, all this talk about robotics, same day delivery, productivity gains through the means of deploying all this technology on the warehouse floor. And yet the cuts that we're seeing are not there. They're coming from corporate. So I think that's why this adds a very interesting flavor to the story.
So what does this tell us about the wider impact that AI is having on jobs at the moment? We have seen, I think, a slowing of job losses. There's still more job losses than there was before, but 2023, I think, was a peak, and we're now seeing job losses, but a reducing amount each year. But like you say, we're seeing videos of automated drone deliveries of various things, but we're actually seeing predominantly a lot of the cuts being in white collar jobs. One of the things I've seen thrown around is the term white collar recession. Where do you see things going at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that if you've been listening to what business leaders have been saying since, certainly since the beginning of the year, but even last year they were saying things like, AI is going to change everything, AI is going to impact our jobs, and I think what we're seeing is a very small erosion that is gaining in pace, and it's something that people who've been watching the space of like the future of work have been seeing for many years now and flagging for many years now. Much like any other technology across the history, you wouldn't necessarily expect like a telephone or a computer to replace a job, right? Outright. However, it will replace a lot of tasks that a job might have, So AI is much the same. You might not be able to replace like for like somebody for an AI LLM right now. But what you can do is replace some of the things that, especially low level things that people were doing. And that does add up. It adds up, not so much like on the headcount side of things, but on the cumulative workforce efforts side of things. So productivity. When they talk about productivity gains, it's something that would have taken somebody 5 minutes is now taking 30 seconds, for example. That adds up. That's suddenly a day of work that people might not need to do. And that adds up. Suddenly you've got fewer people that you need to do things because you can maximize the workforce that you have. And it makes total sense as a result of that to think that you would need fewer people. And yes, it's true that we are seeing a load of that affect corporate at the moment, just because if you think about the way generative AI is intruding into everything and scraping data and the amazing plethora of different applications that it can be deployed to do, you can see how that would be a logical approach. The interesting thing here is that rather than this robotics and AI revolution, meaning that warehouse workers are immediately affected, we're just seeing kind of a freeze on hiring. That's the main thing we're seeing right now, where they're saying we don't need more people, but we're not necessarily seeing people affected yet. Do I believe they will be affected? Absolutely, I do. I really do think so. But with the corporate side of things, it's more also, I suppose, a show of force as well. All of the businesses that are talking about this vociferously and even citing AI as like a reason for cutting, they all have invested in AI, and they need to be able to justify to their investors and to their board what are the savings. And there is no greater saving than cutting headcount, as we know, and it is an completely artificial saving. So I do question the amount of productivity and the amount of use that there is going on with AI at Amazon. And I'd be interested in finding out more. We are looking into this at Wired, but certainly is, what exactly are the gains, and does this translate? Actually, does it really translate in replacing jobs? Because I'm not convinced that it necessarily does.
This does raise a question. We were talking a little bit before we started about the AO Labs thing that Wired's got coming out today. That AI has been tested in doing humans' jobs, and it's not gone so well.
Yes.
Do you think that these jobs in Amazon and other companies were just unnecessary anyway, so they're not going to be hit by the fact that the AI can't really do these jobs yet? Or are we going to be paying for this later down the line when we're like, oh wait, they needed at least 3,000 of those 13 that have gone just yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic example that several things can be true at once, right? Where, what we were talking about. So, AI Lab today, our newsletter will be coming out and talking about a experiment that researchers did from Scale AI, which we mentioned earlier as being invested in by Meta, ironically, and the Center for AI Safety. They took some of the leading AI models and they basically unleashed it on the freelance work market. So, they tried to basically see how much money these models could make by doing work such as graphic design, video editing, game development, or scraping data, administrative chores that you would think are very kind of low level chores for people. So they used Upwork to do this, which is a freelance platform. And they basically saw that they were really bad at it. So from an almost $150,000 worth of work that they could have earned, these AI models earned $1,810, which is nothing. It's 3% of the work money that they could have earned. And the reason behind this, researchers said, it is simply because these models don't have great long-term memory, and they were not able to adapt to work in the same way as human beings do. And I suppose that kind of leads me to answering your question, which is, in terms of the logic of whether it is possible for people to truly replace human beings with AI. I don't believe that it is right now. I do think that with big corporates such as Amazon or in fact Meta, there are layers and layers of bureaucracy, right? So there are people, and we all know what these people are like. In every organization, there's people who basically spend their entire days on Zoom, and they'll do this and that, and it's all busy work, right? And it wouldn't surprise me if, that layer of people that are deemed to be not productive, should anyone examine them closely enough, would be cut, and there are always cuts that can be made in businesses. But at the same time, you see the ebbs and flows, and you'll see there will be a recruitment drive at some point, and you wonder how much retraining would have saved them money, rather than having the sort of the turnover of people, and the cost of hiring. And there is a cost to all of this, I guess. And to me, it's not clear. I mean, this research shows one side of the story, and there are obviously great uses for AI and great savings and all that sort of stuff. And I don't believe at all that there are not bits of work that can be automated. Absolutely, I do. And that there are happening, and that there are loads of examples out there. But, in terms of going head to head with human beings, if they're doing a useful task, it's not the same.
So despite what everybody is being told through the adverts, we're not at a point where AI is replacing people's jobs. They're replacing some tasks as part of those jobs, but they're not at a level of replacing the people yet, is what you're saying.
Your bosses are replacing people. Your bosses are getting rid of people. There will be cuts. We will lose our jobs. It will not be because AI did it. It will be because somebody up there wanted to make, decisions on budgets and to show that they can make some savings. And headcount savings are a time-honored tradition in the corporate world as a way to help the balance sheets, especially nearing the end of the year, the fiscal year, saying we've made X amount of savings. These companies have spent a massive amount on AI, and it is not possible for this AI to already be yielding the results that justify that investment. They have to find that money from elsewhere. It is true that we will get to the point where AI and automation does take jobs for realsies, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We are at a situation where it's corporate decision making that is doing this, and they are hoping that the cuts that they make are not sufficient to damage the overall structure of the business, and that they are able to trim the fat, or however they want to call it, so that they still function in a very efficient manner, but that they are not torpedoing themselves, I guess. But yes, I strongly believe it is not AI doing this to us. It is, in fact, as a workforce, it is in fact just corporate decision making.
So if cuts are less as a response to the productivity gains of AI, should we be expecting this trend of job cuts to be continuing, and the AI to eventually be filling in these gaps?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And it is likely that, especially amongst the cohort that have invested heavily in AI themselves, that they will need to show those benefits, those immediate benefits, quite quickly. So I do expect to see a significant amount of layoffs in that space.
If we then we've got to do this. If we consider this sort of context of job cuts happening, sort of both in the AI sector itself as well as the jobs being cut because of these supposed AI gains, what can we make of this in the context of the AI bubble?
Oh, I mean, it's tricky, right? I think, it's Nvidia today was touted as being potentially up for being the first $5 trillion company. So it's not all like doom and gloom at all. If the company does get to that point, that's one of the big players in the AI space, in this AI bubble, so-called AI bubble, that's doing really well for itself if it does go well. However, we're in a situation where everything is going well, right? Everything's rosy. The investors are interested. People are backing it. There's huge amount of growth and opportunity. We're in the sort of the harvest of AI, I suppose we could call it. But what comes after harvest is obviously famine. So I guess, that's what I'm watching out for. It's like, you've got businesses who do need to justify to all of their investors this return on investment. And I do think that a lot of them might struggle to do that. And I've been open about this before. I think it's very hard. Like they're not set up to succeed necessarily with these hugely inflated valuations, with this huge expectation and this massive competition that we've got going on, not just from Western companies amongst themselves, but also against China, especially. You've got a lot of competition, and it's a really difficult space to play in. I do feel that there will be probably two tacks here, and I am totally speculating at this point, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's two tacks where you've got companies trying to recoup what they have invested that might not be panning out as quickly as they hoped, and therefore doing staff cuts. And you've got on the other side companies that have, so far been able to weather that investment, such as Nvidia, such as maybe OpenAI potentially, where you've got a lot of positive investment news that might help that buoyancy of being able to avoid having to make any drastic changes to the business. I do feel like there are certainly two camps in here. Those are the haves and the have-nots, right? And I feel like Microsoft, Nvidia and OpenAI are on kind of one side, and the rest of the market might fall either somewhere in between or more on the other side of, like, we might have to justify ourselves a bit more. It does help OpenAI, obviously, that ChatGPT has, dominated headlines and certainly been, adopted a lot this year. We're looking at a situation where it's close, if not has surpassed 45 million users in Europe. So it might be facing more regulation. Again, the tables can turn, things can happen next year, which might mean that they have to change things, which might make it less popular. GPT-5 was controversial. There are lots of things, and we've been reporting very closely on the mental health problems that people have been having with ChatGPT and OpenAI trying to address these problems. And there are loads of things that could unpack and then have a knock-on effect that could end up being jobs lost, right? But ultimately, the people who we should be watching very closely is that circle of hires, those people that were poached from one business to the next, those people who are jumping ship from one place to another. Those are the people to watch, because so far the cuts have not affected them. And those are the people that everyone wanted to work with. And where they go next, if they decide to jump ship from the places where they are right now and go somewhere completely different, start their own businesses, much like Mira Murati did from OpenAI, Opening Thinking Labs, you have to watch these people, because they will be the weather vanes of what's going to happen in the business. And it will affect the talent, and the leadership will impact the amount of cuts that companies make. It's inevitable.
And it's a very hard thing to really identify if we actually are in a bubble, or if necessarily we are in a boom. But again, Wired has been doing some reporting on that with the interviewing some of the people that established what booms and bubbles were. It's a very interesting article, but could you quickly summarize sort of how we could try and make a bit of a safer prediction if we are in a bubble or not, for those that are still on the fence?
I'm still on the fence. I think it is difficult, right? I think, you have to you have to purely look at financials, and you have to look at the noise, right? I think, how do I put this? In the nicest possible way, it doesn't really matter unless it bursts. And that's the main thing that you have to remember here, that we're all talking about AI bubbles. We're all obsessing over AI bubbles. There is a reason for it, because every bubble has burst, However, if it turns out that AGI is achievable and they do meet the targets on their way, all of these businesses could do extraordinarily well. And it would be incredible if that were the case. And I wish them all the best of luck, all that sort of stuff. But, if things go badly, which is what everybody expects, that at some point things will sour, this is going to have a knock-on effect for not just the wider industry, but like NFTs, for example. we all remember the boom of NFTs. That was a very self-contained little bubble, and then the crisis level, and NFTs have not recovered. But there was a knock-on effect from NFTs into the metaverse, for example. There was a knock-on effect on other, gaming had a knock-on effect from that. And so there are unexpected consequences for a bubble bursting. There are things that could have happened that won't happen. And I think that's really the interesting thing here when we're talking about automation and when we're talking about jobs. It's not an if, it's a when. But also, in a very real sense, the when might be a lot further than we think if this bubble were to burst. And I guess the things to look out for are inflated valuations, the product launches and the product timelines not matching with what that was expected, promises that are not being kept for no really good reason. And you need to look at the geopolitical sphere as well. If there continue to be issues between the US and China, it is likely that is going to affect the speed at which these companies are able to achieve their aims. And therefore, it is likely there's going to be a knock-on effect on everything else that's further downstream. And I think at the moment, President Trump is in China. He's trying to convince Xi Jinping to kind of like take Blackwell chips. Go on, we know you want the chips. Nvidia obviously is now no longer counting China as even part of its balance sheet because Chinese government has said that there's national security issues. Reportedly that doesn't matter to them, but it's a huge thing where it's like these kinds of roadblocks, these companies need them to go away. And they need them to go away very, very quickly. And this is the situation we're in. Us workers are just caught in the crosshairs of it all. And the reason why this bubble is more interesting than others is because you're in a situation where there is an entire type of technology that hangs in the balance, and that could transform not just work, but our entire life. So the stakes are high.
And just finally, one thing that has sort of stuck out to me, maybe it's my lack of economics and business degree, but massive investments, obviously, again, billions a week, billions a day, really, timed with massive job cuts across basically most sectors, obviously apart from the ones for now immune to AI. What do those two parallel trends tell us, again, in the context of an AI bubble?
That is a very, very good and difficult question to answer. I think, I suppose you shouldn't put them both together in that way. So, for example, sorry.
Fair enough. No, fair enough.
It's okay. So the investment numbers that we're seeing, a lot of it is in, I suppose, infrastructure, yes, which has a cost, which we know what that cost is. But a lot of it is saying, I will do a contra deal where I will pay this amount for your chips, but we have agreed what we think that amount will be, and that then you'll in exchange take something from me. So if you look at that, there's some really great graphs that have been drawn up by journalists. FT has done one, I think Wall Street Journal's done another one, where you can see the sort of linear links between these businesses. And this is just an example of that, right? So you say that these chips are worth $1 billion, but are they? They probably aren't realistically, but they have a cost to make, but that cost is not the same as buying it off the shelf. If we're friends, if you see what I mean, like if I do your contra deal and we're entering into a partnership together, which is what a lot of these businesses are doing, those deals don't hold the same value as what the market is seeing it as. If you see what I mean, like that, just saying, putting the price tag that you would on a retail version of this deal is not the same as what they're actually paying. So I think that's important to understand, first of all. But secondly, I think you've got a situation where you've got these businesses who are propping each other up. So in the context of the bubble, if one were to have issues, whether with manufacturing or setting up data centers and infrastructure, or with a product development, there would be a knock-on effect to all of them. So it's all, we've talked about the house of cards before, but it is literally that, you have, let's say Nvidia's chips have problems, then all the businesses that use Nvidia's chips have problems, then, suddenly we've got products that are relying on chips that are not ready or whatever. Like that would be a really easy example of that. Or in fact, let's imagine that the chip making machines are in trouble. There's one business that does that in the whole world, and then there's a knock-on effect to everyone else. This is it could be unexpected, it could be expected, but when it comes to actual replacement of people, It's where they cut, right? If you're cutting the people that are in HR, communications, ancillary staff, it's one thing. If you're cutting the product team, that's a problem. Right now, that would be a very big problem, and they're not doing that. Not as far as I'm aware. They're not gunning for the product people, even though they're gunning for corporate jobs. And that is strategic, because you need your product people to meet all of the targets. They are the people upon which the entire company is depending on their backs, and on their shoulders it lays, heavy is the head, but it is literally, that's literally what they're asking them to do. We need you to lead the business into this new era, and we need you to do it as efficiently and quickly as possible. So yeah, I would say don't be distracted by the big numbers, because that is revenue that they would have otherwise spent. Do pay attention to who is being cut and in what department, and that will tell you the story of what actually is going on within the business. And if you see things like, we've had to cut loads of product people, you have to ask why. Like, why is that the case? Because if they have all these deadlines and all these targets, it doesn't make sense.
Well, Natasha Bernal, thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you.